welcome to the Messianics Podcast, a podcast about all things Messianic Judaism. Each episode, we will be sharing our opinions as we tackle some of the biggest issues in Messianic Judaism. Now here's your hosts, Rabbis Eric, David, Jonathan, and Toby.
We're so glad that you've joined us again. This week on our podcast, we're going to discuss conferences, retreats, events like that. The MJAA Messiah Conference is taking place this week that we're recording, which will be a few weeks ago or last week when you hear this. But the MJAA Conference is going on, and then next week or somewhere in there
2 weeks from now is the
will be the
conference,
Union Conference, and then there were several other conferences that have gone on. The Tikkun Conference has already taken place. So there's a number of Messianic conferences nationally and then regionally that go on, as well as men's conferences and women's conferences and separate things like our congregation in particular does a cruise retreat where we invite, it's intercongregational, but we're the ones that kind of set everything up. So we thought we would talk about experiences at conferences, not negative experiences, because we want everybody to feel like they want to go to them still. In anything that goes on, you can find negative things to complain about, but positive or fun experiences. And I wanted to start off by sharing an experience that actually happened on one of the intercongregational cruises. And that was on our very first morning. Each day of the cruise, we either have a morning service gathering teaching or we have an evening gathering teaching, depending on whether the ship is on the water where it's going to be there all day, and then we do the morning. And then if people are getting off the boat to go explore the islands or whatever, we do it in the evening afterwards so that everybody can enjoy their cruise but still participate in the events. So the very first day of the cruise, the next day, the first day you get on the boat, but the first morning of the cruise, we gathered in what was the chapel on that ship. Now, we all gathered together, and because it's intercongregational, I don't know everybody that's on the ship when they first arrive, because there's people that come from Texas and Louisiana and other places to join us on the cruise. So we decided we would have everybody introduce themselves. So we're going down the list of, I'm so-and-so from here, I'm so-and-so from here. And we get to the last row of the people that were in the group. And one said, I'm Bob from Thomasville, or Robert from Thomasville, I'm Robert from Pensacola, I'm Robert from Texas. And then the last one was a lady. And she said, well, I guess I'm Robert from wherever she was from. And it kind of struck me as weird. This woman was saying she was Robert. And then we had our service. It was a great service, lots of worship. And I was watching her as it went on, and she was worshiping and along with us and everything. And then we got done, and we were getting ready to dismiss. And she says, can I say something? And I said, yeah, sure. And she said, this is the weirdest AA meeting I've ever been to.
Oh, my gosh.
And what had happened was on the ship itinerary sheet that they give you each morning in your cabin, it had listed the Friends of Bill W. was meeting in the room we were meeting in. They hadn't fixed it to show where the actual meeting was going to take place. So she arrived at our service thinking it was an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting.
Right.
And sat through the whole thing, which was why when because she got there a little late, so she sat down. So it was, hi, I'm Robert, I'm Robert, I'm Robert.
She thought it was like code.
It was code for, I'm a friend of Bill W., and so
you said she participated.
She participated in the service. She sang songs with us.
That's great.
Everything went on, and it was a fully Messianic service. So it was, wow. And she got done, and she said, "This was the weirdest." She said, "I really like it. Can I come back tomorrow?" And we said, "Of course you can." And then she shared a little of her story and how she got to where she was and everything. But it was
God had other plans for
it was just a really fun experience, and she did come back, and she was part of our group meeting each day we gathered together. So, but that was a fun experience where somebody got actually brought to our meeting that was not part of our group, but we did get to interact and share Messiah and love on her and be a blessing to her. So that's one fun kind of experience from a conference. One of y'all want to jump in with one?
Well, this is a funny one because I do actually have some I have a couple of really good ones.
Just a couple.
Well, I've had some. This is Rabbi Toby, by the way. But yeah, I've actually had some life-changing moments at the Southeast Regional. That's the one I've been to the most as far as I went to Messiah one time back in 2012. And I'd spent most of my time with the YMJA then because my wife and I were serving as part of the worship team for the YMJA. So, but most consistently, the Southeast Regional. I will say this, in all my conference experience, I'll say one of the things that really makes a difference, or can make a difference, let's say, and it's not like it's the main thing, is the location of the conference. And the Southeast Regional is always in Orlando, and I really like it there. It's not. I do enjoy the Rosen Plaza. I've made a lot of great memories there, and so it'll always hold a special place in my heart. But I would recommend being very selective about where you go in Orlando, simply because, and it was usually now traditionally, since we've started hanging out with David and stuff, which I've been friends with David since 2015, but we always go to Disney Springs, which is essentially like the little city Disney built outside of the, and that's a blast. You went with us this past year,
It's where we get hats.
It's where we get hats, and various Marvel, Star Wars memorabilia and such. But I remember one time we were going to have some dinner with friends, and it was not like dress nice dinner. It was like we were
fast casual.
Yeah, but it definitely wasn't something I could wear gym shorts to, which is basically what I brought, with the exception of like the suit I wear on Friday night and Saturday. Like I usually have like nice clothes to wear Friday night to the service, nice clothes to wear Saturday morning to the tour service, and then I'm gym shorts and t-shirts the rest of the time. I did not bring jeans. And Brooke's like, so you're going to wear gym shorts to dinner? And I was like, nope. And I was like, but I went through my bag and I did not pack jeans. So I said, you know what? There's got to be a store nearby. I can just grab a pair of jeans. No. There was nothing nearby. Nothing nearby like that I could snag like a $15 pair of jeans.
Not even some $15 at Disney. What are you buying? Water?
Not Disney. I wasn't going. But I was just talking about if there's a Walmart or something.
For future emergency situations like that, there is a Walmart like 5 minutes from the hotel.
I don't remember what I did.
There's also a JCPenney.
I don't know what I was thinking. Sometimes you look back and you realize that you did something stupid.
Sure.
And that is what I did.
Catherine and I, we actually went to the Walmart one of the conferences because Catherine needed something.
Yeah, Walmart or something. Trips is one of my wife's tradition.
Yeah,
it's like,
I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know. I can't tell you what I was thinking. So I went, and the first place that I typed in, I think it was like clothing stores or something, and there was a Gap. And it was like 5 miles away.
Wow.
But this is Orlando on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
So it took me like 45 minutes to get there.
Sure.
I mean, the traffic was god-awful. And I get there, and I spend like $35 on a pair, which is probably pretty cheap for Gap. I get a pair of jeans. And
I didn't even know Gap was still in business.
I was gone for so long. When I get to the place, which is a Chinese place, everyone was done with dinner. And I sit down, and Brooke goes, well, I ordered you some chicken. Your jeans are nice. And now we got to get back to service, because their service is starting. I'm just like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life.
I think I just rocked the shorts.
I should have just rocked like my and ones. No, that's a funny story. I'd love to, I want to share some serious ones later on in the episode. But yeah, that's my first submission. It was a stupid thing that I did. Just has to do with the location. But I do love Orlando. But the only place I really go is like Disney. And if I'm going to go somewhere else, I'm going to ride with somebody.
Yeah.
Because I did not have a good excursion.
So one of my favorite memories, conference, retreat, whatever, is, and this goes back to, this probably was 2002, 2003, something like that, when Suresh David put on the Rise Youth Conference or whatever it was.
What year was
retreat,
this?
Whatever, it's like 2002, 2003.
Oh, this is a while.
It was before we moved to New York. We moved to New York in 2004, so it was probably 2002. So that this was back when like YMJA wasn't doing retreats. Nobody was doing youth retreats because nobody thought it would work in the Messianic community. And so Rabbi Steve Weiler with Shoresh David had the idea to try this for the Southeast and just kind of see what happens. And it was like everybody kind of looked at it and was like, well, is this going to work? Is this something that's worthwhile? And they, their congregation really, for lack of a better way of wording, funded most of it. It was dirt cheap to go. They provided places for everybody to stay. They provided food the whole week and whatever. But what was the most amazing thing about it was that this retreat that honestly most people looked at and were like, I don't really know what's going to happen, what's going to come of it, whatever, ended up having about 400 people show up, 300 or 400 people. They were all age range from, I think the youngest was like 13 and the oldest was, I think, like early 30s or like right at 30, but he was like sort of a youth leader with the congregation he was with and all. But there was this huge group that showed up, and we actually ended up having to find an alternative space to put everybody, like for services and stuff, because there were too many people. But it was this like tremendous shift spiritually, I think, in the youth of the Southeast movement. And as a matter of fact, some of the friends that Danielle and I made at that particular retreat are people that we're still very close with in the Messianic community today. Most of them are still very active in Messianic congregations, and some of them are in ministry in various avenues and such. But it was one of the most impactful. I was telling Rabbi Toby on the way here, because oddly enough we were having a conversation sort of like this on the way here, but I was telling him that this was like, there's those moments you look back at in life that are defining moments, right? And this was one of those defining moments in terms of my faith walk, because that was really, I would say, the point that like I went full surrender. And more so, it was the point that I kind of threw the towel in on my fight with God about being a rabbi, because I didn't want to do that yet. I still don't know that I want to do it, but I'm doing it. But at that point, I was fighting with God on it, and I just kind of threw in the towel. And that was kind of that defining trajectory, like area. But it was such an amazing retreat, 300 something kids that all walked out of there with lives changed, watching as what a lot of people doubted ended up being a whole ton of kids that were fully involved, fully active, fully on fire for the Lord. And I mean, it was Rabbi Eric was actually there, was one of the speakers for one of the events. I forget which service it was, but it was that impactful. But no, but the retreat itself was just phenomenal.
One of the
things
about the retreat that you're speaking of is that the services were all youth run. There were some adult speakers, but the worship service and all, and some of the youth spoke. But their Shabbat service, which was scheduled to be about 2 hours, ended up lasting about 4 hours, 5 hours, not because people talked longer or whatever, but nobody wanted to stop worshiping.
Yeah.
And it changed. Every young person from our synagogue that attended came back life changed, which was a dramatic thing. And from that becomes the YMJA Youth Retreats.
Yeah, the YMJA Youth Retreats kind of spawned to some degree from that. And it actually was such a huge thing that they sort of threw together really quick a last-minute young leaders retreat like 2 months later. It wasn't on the plans, wasn't supposed. It was such an obvious necessity for the really the 20-somethings and early 30-somethings that were had a heart for ministry and all. And so we ended up with another 70-some-odd people that showed up for this thing that was planned in 2 months. And spent an entire weekend in worship together and growing together and all. That was probably one of my favorite experiences in terms of being in a retreat or a conference environment.
Cool.
So I've got two that I want to share briefly. One is my first Rabbis Conference, which when I first attended as a rabbi, I didn't know any of the people there. And the very first night, Rabbi Charlie Kluge was going to be speaking. And when he walked in the room, this has been a long time ago, but the collarless shirts were popular. The dress shirts that didn't have a flip-over collar. They were just almost clergy collar type looking shirts
yeah.
back then, and he had walked in and he had taken a piece of paper and hung it over the front of his shirt, black shirt, so it looked like he was wearing a priest's shirt, with the clergy collar.
Toby, the clerical collar chases you down again.
Yeah, and then and so when they introduced him, they said, and now we're going to call Father Charlie Kluge up to share with us this evening, and it was the opening night of the thing, and all I could think of was, I'm out of here. If they're bringing a Catholic priest to teach tonight, this is really concerning me, concerning this whole Messianic movement and IMCS thing. Now, of course, it was just a joke at the time, but it really was a funny moment at the time. So, but the other one is actually one that it was probably one of the most meaningful events to me that's ever happened at a conference, and it actually deals with my stepfather. And for years, I had tried to share Yeshua with my mom and my stepdad. My dad died when I was very young, and my family. And I had got invited to be a speaker at the Southeast Conference. So I called my dad and I said, hey, I'm going to be speaking at a conference in Orlando, and I'd love for you and Mom to come up. I'll pay for your hotel room and everything, but it'd be nice to have you there, because they only lived an hour and a half away. And to my dad, who was a CPA, if you got asked to speak at a conference of your peers, so if you were, for instance, if you were a CPA and you got asked to speak at a conference, it meant you had achieved something, you were respected, you were well known. It was a very, in that business mindset. Now, he didn't know that at the time I was, I think, the 24th or 25th ordained rabbi in the IMCS, and largely it was, here's a warm body that's ordained, let's use him, and not so much in the way that he was thinking of hundreds or thousands of people getting chosen to speak. But he came to the event, and we asked him and my mom, we said, look, if you can come and to the event, I'll pay for the hotel and all, but I'd really like for you to come to at least one of the events, because you are taking advantage of the inexpensive hotel room and so on. So they came to the service. And then they came the next year, and and it became a way of our family having a family reunion. Lots of my family, at one time there were 40-something of us that came to the conference. But on the last conference that my dad came to, we had the same rule. If you come to the hotel and you hang out, you got to come to one of the services. So he came to the service, and it was his first evening service that he'd come to. And Rabbi Judah Hungerman was speaking, who's one of my favorite speakers. And he's usually a very kind of stand in one place and just talk kind of guy. This particular night, he started walking back and forth on the stage and very loud and almost televangelist, which that was going on. The lady in front of us was worshiping, and in a way that her worship expression was very much like doing karate. and I'm not mocking her, but from an outward appearance. So my dad's sitting next to me, my mom's sitting next to him, and this lady in front of us is doing spiritual karate. The youth dance team from Shoresh David decided they were going to dance right next to us in the aisle. Rabbi Hungerman went through this whole thing where he was very expressive in his worship. It was like if I made a list of all the things I didn't want to happen, because my dad, the CPA, the very conservative, reserved person, was there. It was like God checked off every list of things not to have happen. And then at the end of Rabbi Hungerman's message, he gave an altar call, which again is not something that normally happened. They ask people to come down and have prayer if they want to and stuff like that, but to actually give, if you don't know the Lord, stand where you are, and that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, my mom and dad, they're never going to come back to anything. And as I look over the row next to me, my dad is grabbing my mom's hand and trying to get her to stand up, and she's got a death grip on her chair. She is not letting go. But he stands up, and then he gets led through this prayer of accepting Yeshua as his Messiah at this conference, and 2.5 weeks later has a massive heart attack and dies.
Oh, wow.
And so one of the most meaningful experiences at the conference was my stepdad, who I call my dad because I was young when he married my mom. My biological father died when I was 7, so he was really the dad that I knew most of my life. Gave his heart to the Lord at a Southeast MJAA conference just weeks before he had a massive heart attack and died.
And Paul Wilbur doing concerts at the Southeast Regional for years was the thing that like lured my grandmother permanently to the conference. So she would come every year just to hear Paul Wilbur. And actually, it was at the Southeast the first time she asked for a Bible with the Brit Hadashah in it, with the New Testament in it. And so real quick, without missing a beat, my dad's like, all right, let's go to the marketplace. We'll go find you one right now.
That's right. She said, I want a Bible. I said, I'm going to get you one. And her car, she only had, when she passed, the only CDs she had in her car were Paul Wilbur and Barbra Streisand.
Wow.
In her car. So that's who she listened to. And she proclaimed faith in Messiah to my family, and asked me when I did her funeral to make sure that the whole family understood what her faith was and what it was in. And again, the Southeast Conference, bringing my parents to the Southeast Conference, ended up with both of them
catalyst.
As a catalyst, and ultimately led to my grandparents coming to faith also.
Yeah. I think probably my most meaningful moment was my first Southeast Conference. I'd met a gentleman he was a professor at Clemson University and lived, I think he taught at Clemson but lived in North Carolina. So, and he was telling, for those of you who don't know, Clemson's in South Carolina. But he was, I don't even know how we had gotten to talking, but just kind of one of those, out in the hallways kind of interactions you start to have. And we were talking about, how he really didn't have a Messianic community where he was. He had kind of been attending a church, but he really didn't have, Jewish believers through which he could experience Jewish life with as a believer in Yeshua. So the conference was great for him, and this was the Southeast 2021 was the first conference I had post after COVID, the pandemic, and so he had really been around nobody for a long time, and so he was just kind of laying it all on me, about all these the struggles he had been having, by himself, and how he was just overjoyed that he could be there. It was such a blessing. And then I ran into him again, and he was just, kind of again talking about some of the life troubles that he was, going through at the time. Older gentleman, I don't think he had a lot of family left or that lived close. And so just kind of in that moment, I was like, well, let me pray for you. And so I got to pray with him for, a few minutes. And that was very meaningful to get to do, because it was probably one of the first times that I've ever just kind of been like, let me pray for you, and done it then and there, with someone who really needed it. And then I saw him last year at this conference as well. He was in the dance circle.
Oh, cool.
Up at the front, the Southeast. So,
it's I think the most. I've had a couple. Just very briefly, the first Rabbis Conference I went to this past January was really meaningful because that was going up front, receiving my certificate and all that, and getting prayed over, and that initial laying on of hands means a lot, and I have a lot of good memories there. And I will say, because Rabbi Eric brought up Rabbi Judah Hungerman, I actually had an encounter with him that was really life-changing. It's kind of one of those moments I won't forget. And he probably doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know my name. He was teaching a class, and I don't think it was in 2006, 2007 maybe. And I was just going. I know I was really kind of going through a tough time with some personal spiritual stuff. I was a believer, and I love God very much, but sometimes, God takes you through things, and you kind of wrestle with God over issues in your life.
Yeah.
And I was kind of in the middle of one of those situations, and I had some free time, and I said, I don't want to just come here. I don't want to be negative, but I know that some people just go to the Southeast, especially, to get a rate on a hotel and lay out by the pool all day. And I didn't want to do that, because I think that while God will interrupt your life if you're not looking for Him, I think He especially honors people who are seeking Him. Mm-hmm. The Bible does say, If you seek,
you'll
find, right? And I just was like, I don't want to just come here and just try to meet my future wife, which didn't happen for another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I'm not going to come here and do that, which I've been to plenty of conferences and hoped that would happen. It did happen eventually, but I don't want to just come and try to meet some girl.
Yeah.
I don't want to hang out by the pool. So I said, I'm going to go to this class. I have a couple hours. So I went to Rabbi Judah Hungerman. I'd never heard of him. His slot was when I was available. So I went. And it was not at all like Rabbi Eric, when he first described Rabbi Judah Hungerman, it was like he was standing still and he's very quiet. That's exactly how he was. He's very gentle.
Yeah.
This gentle strength kind of, there's something behind it all, right? It's just kind of how God anointed him, right? And he said, okay, I'm done. And he gives a teaching. He said some really powerful stuff about Jews and non-Jews in the movement, which I thought was so powerful you could almost kind of like feel the awkwardness in the room.
Sure.
He said, so you're Gentile and you're here? Who cares? He goes, are you Jewish? Who cares? I was like, oh man, that's cool.
Yeah.
But when he was done, he said, I have a few minutes that I've set aside because I think God wants to do something. He goes, so if you have somewhere to go, you can go. If you want to stay, I want to anoint you. I want to pray with you. And just about everybody stayed. Just about, some people left, but I stuck around because I was like,
Yeah.
And I'm not going to share what he said to me, but I wrote it down and I still have it. And everything he said to me was happened.
Yeah.
It took like 15 years.
Yeah. But it happened.
10 to 15 years, but it happened.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm saying to say, if you took 8 hours of your day, let's just say you took 8 hours of your day to read the Bible, you could read the entirety of David's life in 8 hours. And I think what happens is people read the scriptures. I'm not trying to preach during this conversation time, but people read the scriptures and they think that when God does things in people's life, that within a week, God completely laid out these people's destiny and acted on their behalf.
Yeah.
What they don't realize is the amount of time, is the years they had to wait and things like that, and the development they had to go through, and the things that God took them through, where they made it seem like it's not going to happen, right?
Right.
Looking back on that moment with Rabbi Judah Hungerman now, I can see like so much of what he said would happen to me happened.
Yeah.
And the faithfulness of God. This is one of the most meaningful moments.
Yeah.
Second thing is very brief. It was at the end of a conference. It was a Saturday night. Conference had one more day, Sunday, but it was Saturday night. And,
Southeast.
Yeah, I was hanging out in the lobby with a friend, and this couple walks up to me and says, me and this guy that I'm with, and they said, what is this? And I said, it's a conference, a Messianic Jewish conference. Well, we're Jewish, but we noticed there's all these Jewish people walking around. And I said, yeah, it's a conference, Messianic Jewish. And they said, well, we don't know what that is, but we have never felt what we're feeling. And that's very brief, but like these people were feeling the presence of the Messiah. It was like, and I think I saw with my own eyes the impact that Yeshua has on Jewish people that don't recognize him yet. It's Yeshua's like, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And I have it, and that's proof that I have it. And even though I believe Yeshua still takes you to school on why he is who he is and how he is who he is. So that happened at a Southeast. So
yeah,
I think one of the funniest experiences I've had is actually from this past Southeast Regional, where I was on stage speaking in the Saturday night service.
Lord help us.
I was preaching about, in essence, like pushing through whatever is in front of you. Like, if God gave you something to do, if he gave you a call, gave you a purpose, you've got to, like, whatever adversity you face, you've got to keep trucking through. You got to push through. Yeah, and literally out of nowhere, I hear this snap right beside my head. I'm like, what in the world? And I'm kind of trying to keep on track and keep going. And then I realize, wait, I can only half see what's going on. And I realized that my eyeglasses broke on stage in the middle of me, like literally in the middle of my message. My eyeglasses break, and my lens shot out of my eyeglasses onto the stage. And so, like, without missing a beat, I had to real quick bend down, pick up my lens, set it down on the podium, and hope I could read my notes through the rest of the message to be able to say what I was saying. And then I get off the stage, everything's said and done. People come up to me that evening afterwards, they're like, man, that was such a great message, and then your eyeglasses breaking, like the Spirit was moving so powerfully through you that it broke your glasses, kind of joking back and forth with stuff like that, and suddenly it dawned on me, I had the prime example of what I was talking about happen, and I didn't even capitalize on it. I just ignored it and kept going.
Well, which ironically points to exactly what you were preaching about.
Right. Yeah.
But I will say, on kind of, since we've come to a more humorous side, at the Rabbis Conference, for those of you who don't go to Rabbis Conference, when you're at the other conferences, the regionals and Messiah, there's so many people. It's so crowded, it's kind of hard to feel the audience sometimes, especially if you're not speaking, if you're just there, it's kind of hard to, but when you're at Rabbi's Conference, it is very easy to tell who is mourning people and who are not mourning people because there's only 100 or so.
And when he says mourning people, we're not talking about someone who's mourning a lost loved one. He's talking about the people who can get up in the morning, and the people who don't.
It's not even the people who show up to the sessions late. It's the people who are in line. They look absolutely toasted, dead, looking for coffee in the mornings. they're coming through. They're like good morning, and then they make their way through. And by about lunchtime, they're all kind of perked up and everything. It's just funny to watch, to see the.
Yeah, there's really cool things that happen with these conferences, and again, whether it's the IMCS or the MJAA or UMJC or whichever conference, the Jonathan Burness's roundtable, all the different conferences. One of the most important aspects of the conference, especially for people in the Messianic movement, is that a large majority of Messianic congregations are small. Mm-hmm. There are not a lot of people in them. And so sometimes you can feel like, John on Patmos. I'm all alone. It's just me. I'm by my. But when you gather together with a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand people who have all, when somebody comes to your synagogue in your hometown, a lot of times they come on Saturday because that's what we do on Saturday.
Yeah.
But when you get in a car and drive 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 hours, and you spend the money for a hotel and you spend the money for registration, you've invested in being at that event. Your heart is invested in what's going on. And so when you get 200, 300, 500, 2,000 people who have all invested to be in that place, and then you see the Messianic movement broader than the 50 or 60 or 100 or whatever at your congregation, it brings a joy and a fulfillment to the breadth of what we are that really helps with not feeling alone, not having Elijah, I'm all by myself and there's, just let me go die, whatever, in my thing. So I think attending these conferences, whether you attending because you're looking for a wife or you're trying to, but just the fact that you're gathered together with a large number of people who are like-minded, who love Yeshua, who want to worship, who have invested in being in this place, is life-changing. It's invigorating. It's spiritually enlivening. And the other thing that I love is I love watching the people worship, the dance. When you see, like at the Messiah Conference, 150, 200 people all doing the dances together from all over the world, all know the dances, all doing the same dance, same movement, it's this organic worship that takes place that just brings tears to your eyes. And when you see especially the younger ones, the children who want to be involved in that and want to be part of that, this organic worship that's going on, it's really powerful. And so those two aspects, even if there wasn't teaching, even if you didn't learn anything, even if you didn't hear in that way, just gathering together with people who, when 500 or 1,000 people all stand up to sing a song together in unity, when 200 people all dance together worshiping, when people are praying for each other and crying on each other's shoulders and all those things, just that not just fellowship like going and having coffee, but the spiritual fellowship that takes place in that is so meaningful and so necessary for us that I think it's a worth all on its own just being there for that.
I just want to say that this is also kind of to switch back to funny, because that's the thing, that these are very meaningful times, but they're also really funny. So I just want to say there's this hallowed area. This is about the Southeast because this is about the Rosen. So there's this hallowed area that, like, I always wanted to go, a place where I always wanted to go but never had a chance to, because every time I look over there, it's always filled with people, usually male rabbis, like older male rabbis sitting there, like, and people I don't know, and I would feel weird just going and sitting in the midst of these guys, and that is the hot tub at the Rosen Plaza pool. Like, for years I had gone to the Southeast,
sacred ground,
and it's always got all these older rabbis in it, and I don't want to say, well, yeah, I'll say, it's kind of like you're a little intimidated, and these guys don't know me, and I'm just like, man, I don't know. I don't want to I know a couple of them, kind of, sure, whatever, Yeah. So, but I always sometimes I just want to sit in the hot tub because I just want to sit there.
Sure.
But every time, I couldn't take my wife over there, and I'm just like, these guys don't know me. I finally got to sit in the dang hot tub, and it was at this past Rabbi's Conference, and I don't know what was different. Yeah. But I finally got a chance to go sit in that thing, and we all, me and Jonathan and our wives were there for a little bit. Yeah. Of course, I couldn't stay there long because of all the years that I finally get to sit in the hot tub, it was actually the year that I became an assistant rabbi. At the MCA.
Yeah.
So
you were also doing backstage.
So it's like I'm in the club. Yeah, I also was backstage. It was because I brought my kids, and my kids were just like, they wanted to be 5 minutes in the hot tub, 5 minutes in the pool, back and forth. But it was the year that I brought my kids, and bringing my kids to the conference, which I could never not again because they loved it so much.
Yeah.
But we went, and I spent probably as much time helping David backstage with stuff. I probably spent as much time in the pool as I did because they were in the pool anytime we had a free moment. I was going to bed at like 9 o'clock because that day I had spent like probably
4 hours,
4 to 5 hours. No, literally like 2.5 hours during the day and like 2.5 to 3 hours at night. So, but I got to sit in the hallowed hot tub at the Rosen at this Rabbi's Conference. I thought that was funny.
I think in a lot of professions, a lot of deals are done on the golf course or at the bar, the nearest bar or whatever. And for whatever reason, in the Messianic Jewish movement, way too many things happen.
The halakhic decisions are made in the hot tub.
Things get done at the hot tub at the Rosen Plaza.
I know,
and it like the trajectory of everything is kind of melded right there.
Yeah. It used to be that they had the hot tub, but there were also the couches that were out in the lobby.
Yeah.
Now they have chairs that are there, but they used to have couches, and we used to sit there, after service in the evening, sometimes till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, just fellowshipping and sharing, and it's such an impactful part of the thing.
Go ahead. Sorry, back to what Rabbi Toby was talking about a minute ago with his kids being at the conference and all.
Yes.
Look, I grew up going to these conferences. Like, my dad, I'm a second generation rabbi. My dad's, as a matter of fact, I think the Southeast Regional I've been going to for the majority of the last 30 years. And I've gone to rabbis' conferences since I was in middle school. And so I wasn't in the conference, but I was there.
Yeah.
And so I can honestly tell you, my kids have kind of, whether they wanted to or not, forced to tag along with. Now they really like it because they get to go to the pool and all that kind of stuff. And now they're a little older, so they've got a little autonomy.
Yeah,
and
freedom.
They kind of can do their own thing and whatever. But it is some of the best relationships I've had over the years in the movement, which is important. If you don't have those connections, if you don't have those people you can pick up a phone and call that know what you've been through, that have had some of the same experiences, that have walked the same kind of path that you have, it's really hard sometimes to do what we do. But when you have those people that not only are they doing the same thing, or they're kind of working the same job, if you would, and fighting in the same field you are, but they're people that you've had a deep connection with for years upon years. My kids, some of their closest friends are not people in our city or our county, although they have really good friends in the area. Some of their closest friends are other rabbis' kids that they've grown up with at the Rabbis Conference or at the Southeast Regional, that now like they text back and forth constantly and make plans for us. Like one particular family, the Hackett's, who's an associate rabbi in Indianapolis, their daughter and our daughter are just constantly texting each other and coming up with plans and being like, hey, we've decided we're all going to go do this together. So I was like, wait. I feel like some steps got skipped here. What's going on?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of things added to this. One is that if you're a Messianic believer, there's battles that you're in your life that don't get experienced by any other group of people.
Right.
And going to a conference like this allows you to fellowship with people that are going through those kind of battles. And if you're a leader, going to a rabbi's conference or a leadership conference does that. It's kind of like when used to be when people went to war. When they came back from war, they'd spend a couple of weeks or a month in a ship getting back to the United States, back to their family, back to where they're going. And in that ship, they had time to basically have group therapy, to be with other people that had been through the experience, to walk through it, to deal with that. These conferences give an opportunity for people to talk with people who've gone through the same journey, whether they might be a step behind them or a step in front of them, but it connects in a way that allows us to strengthen one another.
And to that end, I know you're about to share dates and stuff. To that end, you hear us on this show talk quite a bit about the various kind of approaches and flavors and theological opinions and doctrinal statements and stuff within the Messianic Jewish movement. And if you've listened to us for long enough, you know that there is a wide variance in the Messianic Jewish movement in a lot of things. And so one of the neat things about going to these conferences is the fact that you can hear your rabbi on a regular basis and know exactly what they think and where they're coming from. But when you go to these conferences, you get to hear a wide swath of the Messianic Jewish movement.
It's like going to a buffet.
But even though there are going to be things that you're not necessarily going to agree with that are said or suggested or whatever, the reality is you get to see that connective tissue that ties us all together. Because there are some differences in the way our congregations do things versus some congregations in the West Coast or the Northeast or whatever. There are variances and differences, but there's a cohesive thread that ties us all together, and the same is true interorganizationally. The IMCS, the UMJC, Tikkun, Ahavat Ami, all these, like, we all have little niches and differences that we do, but there's a cohesive thread that ties us all together. And when you go to some of these conferences, you get to see that really play out and be a focal point.
Mm-hmm. And when I actually go to the conferences with my people from our congregation, I like to sit down with them and help them to choose places, this one, I think you'd enjoy this, I think you'd, so that they will go to visit people from other areas, other places to listen to. I always tell them, don't come to my class. You get to hear me all the time. Go listen to someone else. But the one thing I wanted to say that, as I said, the Messiah Conference in Pennsylvania is either a week ago or 2 weeks ago, depending on when this comes out. But I want to encourage everybody, if you didn't get to attend Messiah Conference this year, go to the MJAA website, look up the live stream link, and listen to the very first service. There was a young lady named Abigail Crowley that spoke. I think she was 13 years old. She's the youngest person that's ever spoke at a main stage Messiah Conference event, as far as I'm understanding and remembering. But she gave a message that I think everybody needs to hear, especially not just kids. Don't just say, "Hey, here's a 13-year-old. You're 13. I want you to go listen to it." But listen to the cry of her heart for our movement, for people her age and the adults and the other people around, and just really take to heart what she said. I'm sure that there's other groups, Tikkun and others, have their videos live stream that you can catch up, and I encourage you to go to their websites and watch some of these conferences and some of these events, but especially listen to Abigail Crowley, her message. It's only about 10 or 15 minutes long, but it's 10 or 15 minutes that is well worth putting your time into. And if you didn't get to go to any of the summer conferences this year because you just didn't know about them or didn't plan, there's a conference coming up in California, the Southwest Conference, MJAA. There's the the Southeast Conference in December, as well as conferences with Tikkun, with UMJC.
And you don't have to live in the region
right.
to go to the conference.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and matter of fact, there are people that just go to all of the conferences. Yeah. That's their the way they get their fellowship and enjoy. So find a conference close to you or one that you can get to, and spend time there. I promise you, it'll be well worth the investment of your time and energy to go and fellowship. If all you do is get into a worship service and actually enter in with people who have purpose to be there and invested in that time, it will be a blessing to you.
And do not go in with agenda. Like, you're not going there thinking, okay, I'm going to get this and this and this from it. Go in and just let God do what God's going to do through the people He's orchestrated for those purposes.
Right, and go listen to different people. Make sure, go to listen to people you've never heard of, and let God really touch your heart through these events.
And listen to all the titles. Like, look at all the titles of the day sessions and stuff, and the ones that rub you wrong, go listen to those, because odds are they're going to be the ones you're going to get the most out of.
The conferences really teach you how to learn to use tact.
Yeah, and when you go there, go to the services, but then go to the fellowship areas. Don't just go to your room. Don't just go by yourself, but mingle. Make the step to connect. If you want to have friends, you have to be friendly.
Go to the holy ground of the hot tub.
Yeah, if you can make it.
If you can squeeze in.
You can get it. If you can get in there.
Well, I hope this has been encouraging to you and a blessing. I know that it has been to us, just to share some of our experiences at conferences and encourage you once again. There are conferences all over the country, whether they're smaller conferences like women's retreats, men's conferences and retreats, regional retreats, leadership retreats, whatever. Find one, go attend it, become part of it, and connect with the greater Messianic movement. We are so much stronger together.
Thank you for listening to the Messianics podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you can be notified every time we drop a new episode. And be sure to follow and interact with us on social media at Messianics Podcast.